saw the show first, so all the movement and music selection is definitely inspired by that. And I got a tour from Stephen of this show, and then also at TSU there's a coordinating show that Jamal curated. And specifically looking at this one, I pointed out a few different works that really spoke to me and sort of digged in deeper to the artist's description on those, and then talking with Stephen as well about them, and saw that there were so many musical references in his creative process. And that really drove my music selection. So I kind of did my research there and pinpointed maybe songs or musicians or artists that he was inspired by, and then I sort of dug into those on my own, and then just pulled different selections that seemed to work together. I split it up into 4 sections and decided to title the work as a whole Resilience, and I sort of pinpointed my 4 aspects of what resilience means to me. And so the first section was about spirituality and surrender, and the second section was about fight and struggle for me. And then the third, which was in the back, Low Ceiling Gallery, was really about identity and confidence and sort of embracing one's own cultures. And then the fourth was about joy and triumph. I thought it was important to include sections of joy and triumph because I consider myself a joyful person. Well, I love to laugh, but I also love dance that brings joy to people. Like, that's always the dance that I loved performing. So it just felt right to include that amidst this idea of Black history and African American struggle and resilience.
Mm-hmm. Well, you succeeded.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know I had chills when you have the Marian Anderson opera and you move into the saxophone music that references Texas Fried Tenor. So maybe you could just, that one in particular,
Sure.
feels like that chapter is particularly powerful.
That was the first one that I started working on, and I think it also resonated best with me as well. So that was the one in the High Ceiling Gallery that started with Marian Anderson singing at the Lincoln Memorial, and that's inspired by a work that's right to our left, sort of about how she sang there when she was denied the opportunity to sing in Constitution Hall. And then it tied into a segment of Nikki Giovanni's The Drum, which was inspired by the untitled The Drums there on either side, actually, in that room, and ties into Pride Freeze that's right around the corner with all the music selections, and then worked its way to Texas Fried Tenor in the corner, and that last rendition of a jazz rendition of Beyonce's Pray You Catch Me, that I've loved that song for so long. And in terms of structuring the piece, the first half was pretty well choreographed, and then whenever I hear that song in particular with the sax, I just felt like choreography and me codifying my movement wouldn't express it as well as just naturally going for it and feeling that. And I did one of the second section actually with Marian Anderson earlier today at TSU. And that's obviously a different space as well. And I knew that coming in to hear the artwork that quite literally inspired the movement and the music choices would significantly influence how I dance the work. So I tried to pull on that as much as possible.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your work? Because I think it's unique in the way that you do fuse dance and choreography with social justice and sort of larger political themes and African American identity. And how do you sort of try to bring those together in your own work?
Sure, yeah. I think I'm still working on it, still figuring out how to do it. But when I went to college, I got a dual degree BFA in dance and African American studies, so my passion has always lied at that intersection. And I think for me, I've found that having opportunities to do smaller projects where I really get to dictate how my movement comes across and what movement I do rather than, for example, company work or rep work, is where I'm starting to find ways to fuse those two worlds. But I've always been inspired by art that speaks to our social climate. And I think you mentioned a little about my family in the beginning and how I kind of grew up in a household like that. Because my parents are both sitting right over somewhere. And they're both teachers and are visual artists, and we lived in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania for a year when I was younger in East Africa, so I've always sort of been drawn to like this fusion of art and African American history, and I think there's so much for me to discover personally, but also to share with audiences and then to learn from audiences. So that's just what excites me as an artist and has always spoken to me as an artist, so I'm trying to find my way in doing that for myself. There have definitely been many outdoor performances where you just sort of have to learn to adapt in the moment. And I think the more I do that, the more I learn that that's kind of where my authenticity shines through. Because I know some people in here have been able to watch that Cistern performance, and that was completely spur of the moment and totally unrehearsed. And Harrison was just generous enough to say, here's the music, here's the singer, and you can get up there and go do it. And he'd never seen me dance before, and he let me take on the 4 minutes, and I think that was a very powerful moment for me, because it was one of the first times where I was just given the space to just be me, authentically me. And so I think sort of in these unconventional practices where we don't necessarily have the rehearsal time, or we don't have the choreography all set, like that's where I'm starting to develop my voice as an artist. And that's really exciting for me because I see so much like untapped potential. So I just am eagerly grasping at those opportunities because I think I learn something new about me as an artist every time.